Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ladies and Sosa podcast. My name is Sahra.
What happened to Sahra?
My bad. You know,
Yeah.
it was a glitch. It was a glitch in the system.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Do it again.
No, we're going to keep that.
I know we're keeping it, but say it
again.
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Sahra. Yeah, so you can call me Chomot as well if you know me. That was my growing up name, my Dinka name, my cultural name. So Sahra or Chomot.
It's in bed is what they call it.
Yeah.
And then what they call you at the house. And I'm KG. And today we're on the couch. It's been a minute since we've been on the couch. So
it's been a while.
It feels different. I miss it. I feel closer to you on the couch in
Me
a weird
too.
way.
And I feel like it just kind of gives us like host. Like you can host the
it's
show
way
a little
more
bit more.
chill.
When I'm sitting over there, I'm all in the conversation.
BBC.
Yeah, like,
News anchor vibes.
Okay. Period.
Yeah, this is better.
But we have a special episode today and a special topic. Well, I don't know if it's special. It's a topic that people keep bringing up.
Yes.
And I think it's our South Sudanese or Sudanese identity. And we have the pleasure today to actually have a Sudanese guest, which a lot of people have been asking for when we talk about these topics. Everybody's like, we love the show. We love you guys, but please have a Sudanese, personality, a Sudanese panelist. And so today we do. But we're going to go ahead and introduce our panel before anything. So let's go ahead.
Yeah,
Can you go ahead and introduce
Yeah, so we're going to go around the table and introduce our guests. Please, your name, what you do for occupation, and since this is a Sudan and South Sudan conversation, which side you identify with to start.
Ooh,
Yeah.
That's tough.
Okay. I'm Aliera. You can follow me on Instagram at East African Queen 3_. I'm South Sudanese.
He does that all the time with my mind.
Since we're doing it's in bed. My name is Boba.
So cute.
Oh, yeah.
I wish I had an Islam
He does that with me.
Vaida.
The first time he's done
What?
to me.
They didn't give you Islam
I
bed?
mean, dude, it's just Vaida.
Okay.
But it's my everyone. But I have it's my grandmother's name.
He does that with
Very
me every
special to me. But I'm Vaida, and I'm South Sudanese, and I work as a teacher.
We got to give Vaida Islam bed later. But
Yes,
yeah.
I want one so
And
bad.
next, we have a very
Yes.
special guest, first time on the
very.
podcast. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Mohammed. My ism bet is Hamoudi or Hamada, and new to Dallas, but we're loving it here.
From where?
Excited to have a conversation. From the East Coast originally, from Boston.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
different. How do you
very
see the
different.
difference between Dallas and Boston?
Huge difference. There's a huge cultural shock.
Traffic.
People here are
Friendly.
people here are very welcoming, very easygoing. Time is definitely on your hands here, but there's just a parallel of people taking their sweet time, and then people who are just ready to go, and then want to get things situated.
How long
and
have
get
you
ready.
been here?
Been here since last year.
Oh.
Yeah, since October. So
And
yeah.
Muhammad is actually from Sudan.
Yes.
He's
I was
Sudan-
actually raised in Sudan. So I was actually born in Yemen. So I have a very interesting childhood. But I was born in Yemen. But when I was about 2, I moved to Sudan. And my mother, she's from Kosti, so a little bit more southern next to the White Nile. And then my father's from Khartoum, but he grew up in Omdurman. So from 2 all the way till when I was 12, I was pretty much in Sudan. So Sudanese full adil kida. So my Sudanese is gonna come out here and there, guys.
No,
So
this is the
just
place
warning,
where-
you know what I mean? Just warning.
Comfortable. Yeah, this is the place
Yeah.
where.
So
Please.
but yeah, man. So but love being Sudanese. Love it's one thing to obviously consider yourself Sudanese, but it's a whole nother thing to live there, witness it there, have my childhood there, because my childhood is not in America. I don't have an American childhood. My childhood was specifically in Sudan. So
That's so cool.
to experience that and to come here and now being what we call first generation of immigrant parents, it's been good. It's been good and we're loving it.
How long have you been in Sudan? Did you live there?
Yeah. So I lived there for from when I was 2 all the way to when I was 11. So close to 9 years.
Oh, yeah. I think that's
In
important
Khartoum?
for the
So
context
Khartoum,
of
but
our
I'm honestly
Bahrain?
my father's he's from Khartoum, but I honestly hated Khartoum. I never.
So
really
where did
liked
you live
Khartoum.
then?
I lived in Kosti.
Kosti. Oh, okay.
Kosti.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's so
Okay.
cool. Well,
So,
thank you for
yeah.
coming.
Of
We're
course,
so
of
happy
course.
to have you.
No, I'm glad to be here.
Shout out to Tariq for bringing our good
Yes.
friend.
Big shout out.
Finally.
And how? First of all, we
What a
know.
silence.
By the way, he
Tariq-
told me there was just gonna be some food here.
So
you should
you-
come and buy it.
Yeah.
Now I'm in front of a microphone.
Yeah. Funny how life works.
Crazy.
No, but Sudanese culture, the way that we just be like, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
come
yeah,
do
of
the
course.
show.
Yeah.
Put your microphone.
Yeah.
Like we do not like that's our culture.
Dialogue.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
let's go, let's do it.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised.
Food is
And
a good trap.
Yeah, you
How
gotta
do
get him in
you-
there somehow.
How do you actually know Tariq? How did you guys meet?
So Tariq, we actually met in a
Cousin's
wedding.
wedding.
Yeah, we met at a wedding. He came down to my neck of the woods, which was Boston. So we met at a wedding there. Just vibed right away. So
And then,
Oh, and you liked him.
surprisingly, I know
I
that's
know,
crazy.
no, Tariq,
Just kidding. Just kidding. We got to fight back because he's always joking on
Yeah.
us.
I've never met one person that did not like him
That's so hard
okay,
to
that's hard to
believe.
believe, Tariq.
because I blocked them. So
We love you, Tariq. We love you personally. But
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
oh well, my name is Tariq. Born in Juba, the only person in
Here
this
we
panel born in Juba. But I raised in Khartoum, Sudan. So and then raised in Cairo, and then Florida. So I'm kind of a different neck of the wood. I think this episode is about how you identify yourself, right? So I identify myself as Sudanese. I
South
feel
Sudanese.
like I identify myself as Sudanese because I feel like I typically I identify myself as a Kushite. That's way back before the countries got separated
Independent.
by British lines. You know,
Yeah.
whether it's a Kushite or so. But yeah. So I've been in Dallas for a while now, 4 years. It's pretty good. So we just here.
I love that. I do.
The
I
only
love it.
real South Sudanese.
The only real South Sudanese. Okay, well, we'll get into that because
The
maybe
real Juba.
some people will
Not South
not
Sudanese,
understand the
Juba.
difference between Khartoum and Juba.
Juba.
we have the
And-
whole episode to get all into that.
Yeah, so we'll get into that today.
Yeah.
But Willie, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. I'm Willie. I was born in Kenya. I like to
Miss
say
Kenyan.
that
Switch it up. I
I
know
like
that's
to
right.
say that I was conceived in South Sudan. but then my parents had to, because of the war, they had to
Yes.
go to Kenya, and that's where I was born.
Yeah.
But
That's a good.
That's
a good way.
Good way to put it in for sure.
but I definitely identify as South Sudanese. But don't stop clapping, Sarah. Because I say but because I think ethnically I would just say Sudanese because like that's what I was until when they became separate 2011.
2011, yeah.
So I don't think like my identity just changes all of a
Overnight.
sudden one night because two people decided to make a deal. So I've always felt like I'm Sudanese, like I've always been Sudanese. Which part of Sudan? Then I would say South Sudan. Yeah, but
We gonna get into it.
but yeah.
It's gonna be a spicy one
It's
for
gonna
the
be good.
viewers because this is a big debated topic about which either or how you identify for both sides. I feel like so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Togreal Martin Manila Yuel. I differ because I am the backbone of SPLA. Those of my dad fought for the country and made the country become who they are. South Sudan could not have been South Sudan without those of my father and the SPLA movement. I was born in Wau. I grew up in Kenya, in America. But at the end of the day, I'm South Sudan, and that's where the battle come in. Those that were born in South Sudan and the one that were born in Sudan. But the struggles continues because of those of my father.
Yeah.
Well,
This is a great way to open it up.
that was amazing way, and I'm a little nervous a little.
How do
bit.
you feel? Because you took a deep breath when Willie was like, I identify as Sudanese. So do you can already feel that this is a topic or a point that's going to be debated? Because we've had episodes in the past and clips in the past where, I kind of had a clip where I said I identified as Sudanese.
Yeah,
And that was,
and you didn't even expect it to be like a big thing.
I
didn't
did
either.
it,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of pushback
Pushback.
and blowback on that.
Yeah.
And it made me have to go back and really look at why People said that, and it gave me a different perspective, a new perspective. But
Yeah,
how do you feel about it?
there's pushback on like pushing back on being Sudanese as well. Me and Tariq are related, so I do feel connected to being South Sudan because my father was a part of the SPLM as well.
Radio speaker, and that was the one that
Yes.
broadcasted South Sudanese
Yes.
movement in SPLA in the bush.
Yeah.
Her dad,
Benjamin.
Uncle Benjamin,
yes.
did that. Proudly did that.
Yes.
He did. He proudly was a part of the rebel group, which was which stood for
SPLA.
which stood for like autonomy and being able to not be marginalized, fighting against marginalization of the South Sudanese people, the southern region at the time, and the discrimination, the racism that we felt politically, economically, systematically. There were so many things that he fought for. So I automatically, when South Sudan became a country, I strongly say South Sudan easily. Like I don't know if you guys watched like the episodes, I always say South Sudan, South Sudan, South Sudan. I don't think there's times where I like slip up. If I have, like, you know, it's just I just feel connected to South Sudan just because of my father. But I do understand the argument of Sudan. We were all one country for so long, and there's still marginalized people in the region of Sudan right now to this day. So I understand the argument. I just personally feel like we should say South Sudan because there's been so much blood loss, honestly, for us to not identify ourselves.
So like SPLA slash SPLM slash SPLM. What does it stand for?
Is it
The
Southern People's Liberation Movement?
Wait. Is it Sudanese People's Liberation Movement?
Sudanese People's Liberation
Not
Movement.
South Sudanese People's Liberation.
Because at that time we were not a country by ourselves. We had to identify with Bashir.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the correct.
Yeah.
I guess.
So it was
that like at the same time, even when they started fighting, I don't think. I mean, some people will disagree, but I don't think initially the goal was to separate into a different country. The goal was so everybody can be free.
Marginalized. They didn't want to be marginalized.
The people that were being marginalized in the whole country when we were Sudan, the biggest country in Africa. Everybody would be free within the same country.
Right.
I mean, we ended up being two different countries, but at the time, I think the goal wasn't actually to separate. It was to just make people free within this country of ours, which was Sudan at the time.
And that was the time those of, Uncle Carbino, 1983, the first gunshot went off. They wanted to be independent people because we did not want Sudan. Religion was the one that was taking over. So when he did that, and those of my dad and, Uncle Arok and all the, Uncle Yusuf Kwad, they came along. I grew up with them as my dad was part of the SPLA. We wanted freedom. We wanted to be free. And then, when it happened, then it happened. But we did not, we just wanted our freedom. That's all our parents wanted for us and for our generation to come.
I do think that that's an interesting point that like the goal was not initially to just like break away from Sudan.
Yeah.
It was to be one country living happily, ever after with the, the
freedom.
Khartoum seeing us as people, like as our own people and like, respecting, because that's the thing that we have to discuss. And that's the part that makes it complicated. We do have to be honest about how our people were being treated. And the people of the southern region, people who were darker skinned, like the pure like
Dinka
Nuer, like Nilotic people, the dark skinned people, we were not treated as equals.
Absolutely.
In our own country. So that's the part that makes it complicated because we say that, we were all one country, it was Sudan, but we weren't being treated as Sudanese. Khartoum was looking at us differently. So I think it's important to talk about like how Khartoum, like the northern, the capital at the time, which was Khartoum, and it's still the capital of Sudan, and how they viewed the southern part and how we were treated, and kind of just peel back that layer and dive into that.
Have to. It's part of what we are and what has made South Sudan a country, or Sudan a country. We are the biggest country in Africa, and now we divided because the CPA of 95 could not do anything. So they said, since we are a country, that's when they decided we do the voting. And when we did it, was 98%.
Yeah.
separation, and that's how we became South Sudan.
Yeah.
And now we have,
So-
It's parallel to, because I always juxtapose it to how America was in the Civil War with the Confederates and the Union, is because the minority always feels like they're marginalized. And democracy works, the way democracy works is the majority is always going to have the power. So if you want democracy, you have to look at it as like, okay, whoever is the majority is going to marginalize the minority. Now, if you want a republic, then there's a different conversation there where you are having statehood, having voices, and that's kind of where when the American Civil War went, with the South wanted slavery, the North didn't want slavery, et cetera, and you can kind of juxtapose that with how Sudan was, with like when the South Sudanese wanted their freedom, but then, as far as like, they don't want Sharia law, but the North Sudanese wanted Sharia law, but the North Sudanese were the majority, and they feel like they can push Sharia law into South Sudanese. So there's parallels to that, but also at the same point, it's like a lot of times it's the way government works is separation does not equal just having your own country does not equal like you're just gonna prosper moving forward. Is my issue with being with the South Sudanese was like when it happened, yes, I was happy it happened, and I consider myself South Sudanese in that year. But then as the stages went forward, I started noticing that the way the government was being built, the people that's in government did not align with my views. So me personally, that I did not feel I'm aligned with the government. If I'm not aligned with the government of a country, I cannot align with that country.
Can't identify.
But
I cannot identify with that country. So after 2-3 years, I stopped calling myself South Sudanese. Even though I was born in Juba, I started calling myself Juba, Sudan. That does not mean I align myself with the Sudanese government in Khartoum. But I grew up in Khartoum. I grew up in Egypt, or Juba. Or I grew up in Juba. I grew up in Khartoum. So that does not mean I align myself with those government. But at the same point, I do not align myself with the newly formed government, because they did not align with my views. What they say that they was going to do when the war happened.
Yeah. You are right with that, because what happened is the majority that died for this country, those of John Garang, those of William Yuan, those of Arongton, those of my father Martin Manyela, fought for the country, died. The newer people that came did not align by what it is supposed to be, and that's why the new generation is backing off, because we have been disappointed. Because my father did not die for that.
Right.
What's happening right now?
Yes.
And I get so mad, and I get enraged, because my father did not die for this country, for this crap that's going on right now.
Yes.
But then it's like kind of like insulting or sad when people say, well, who cares about like South Sudan, because South Sudan is like hasn't become anything, when like we know our fathers or our uncles fought for it, or
I'm
sacrificed,
an orphan because of my father, sacrificed for my country.
Exactly. So it is kind of like, I don't know, it's hurtful a little bit. I understand it, but it's hurtful to hear that people don't.
I think so.
Not that they don't identify with the word, but they feel like it's all for nothing. Like it's like
no. I think what the assurance I had when I went to South Sudan and look at the billboard. July 30th, the martyrs, and I saw my father, your father, those that died for South Sudan and sacrificed. It gave me a peace of mind for a minute. But then when you see everything that's going on in South Sudan, you get disappointed. You don't even want to identify with South Sudan anymore.
Yeah.
And then also with that, like the martyrs, you also have to think outside of yourself. Like South Sudan is not only about the martyrs. It's about the benefit of the whole country, like the future of the country. And if people don't feel like the future of the country is going anywhere, they have a right to be angry about the independence. Like there's an argument about people saying like, I don't want to celebrate South Sudanese independence because what is South Sudan as a country doing for the people?
Nothing.
Like people, and I'm like, what do you mean? My dad fought for the country. But you have to look outside of yourself sometimes and be like, you know what, you're right, because there's still people suffering from instability, economically, politically.
I have
no
a question.
Yeah,
It's a tough one too. I want to ask the panel, do you feel like us separating and becoming two separate countries, now seeing how everything is here in 2024, was worth it? Do you feel like it was a good decision to split, or do you feel like it was better for us to remain one country of Sudan before?
I'm still of.
I want you to go because you're Sudanese and we haven't heard from you.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that was probably one of the worst decisions that ever happened.
Why?
The reason why, because I feel like, yes, the difference is there, but the separation wasn't necessary. The reason why is because, in Africa, problems are much bigger and much more nuanced than what we could ever think of. But it really boils down to us being together. And I think those two nations being together, they should have never kind of steered away from what the actual goal was just to keep an efficient, resourceful country that is benefiting from itself. Ever since the split happened, people are not only struggling with identity and struggling with wanting to aspire to love their country, but things have just kind of gone downhill, in terms of resources, in terms of both countries even acquiring what they need to kind of survive and contain.
Yes.
Obviously, we know the struggles of South Sudan, but the struggles of Sudan are even prevalent as well. Just now. So to me, like, I always want to be in a thoughtful manner of being together, and I think being together, sticking together, is more important than the decision makings of one or two or three rulers or people in lead that could have really made a better decision at the time, but power of greed, power of love, and wanting more for themselves kind of made the countries kind of struggle into what they are.
But it changes everything because we've dealt with Bashir for the longest time, and now we're not dealing with Bashir. So the whole, game ball has changed.
Yeah.
And, the South Sudanese government has to do something different, which is not doing something different. So, as you said, it brings a different dynamic to us.
Absolutely.
But I think a lot of times it's like we're looking at it from a macroeconomic standpoint, where up until the 1950s, 1960s, Sudan was one of the major powers in East Africa, close to Egypt as far as power, because it had a lot. Most of the gold that comes out of Sudan. But now with the separation, what's happening is like other countries in that region can just do whatever they want to. Ethiopia is building a dam where they can at any point cut off power, cut off water to the Blue Nile. The only person that can actually stand up to them is Egypt. Sudan can do nothing. South Sudan can do nothing.
And keep in mind,
because they can, as much oil we can pump,
it doesn't
the
help.
oil can't go anywhere if it cannot get refined. And the only way they can get refined is in Sudan.
Sudan.
So if you have one country together, you have a synergy, whereas 1 + 1 = 3, and you can actually justify your power through the strength of the economics, like what he was talking about, is like the resources. You can use those resources, whether it's gold, whether it's oil, whether it's silver, where there's so many things that you can have in that country. Because I think a lot of times it's like people looked at it from a standpoint where it's like, well, I don't want Sharia law, or I don't want this to this. Okay, we can look at it from a standpoint of like, do you want a democracy or you want a republic? Let's separate the states, where each states have their own independent power, but there is a federal government. The way America did when after the Civil War happened, because the Confederacy wanted one thing, the Union wanted another, but then they came together and they had a compromise. It's like, okay, we can give you a state power, but at the end of the point is that the federal government still goes where it needs to be, but each state will have equal opportunity to vote and to put their voices get heard. And I think we didn't get that chance. We just wanted war. We just wanted to be separated. And now that we separated, a lot of these people that got lust for power, who never had power for 50, 60, 80, 100 years.
Mohammed wanted to say something. Go ahead.
And they just became greedy.
Yeah,
power and greed.
In addition to that, like, we never always sometimes forget to talk about is how there was a time where Sudan and South Sudan were in conjunction together, where we were using resources of going into the north, and then because I remember literally vividly visiting Sudan a year right after the split, and I remember just seeing how expensive things were because now the resources were being cut off that were coming from South Sudan to Sudan. So to me, just as a kid, I realized, okay, this to me is not the answer. Splitting was never the answer, And sometimes I think we get caught up in it's religion. To me, I don't think religion is just enough where
was just
people
an
cannot
excuse.
live together.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Or be together.
I actually agree with the
It was the
religion part.
excuse that was used to justify the war.
Mhm.
And
My
Yeah, it was.
biggest thing is the discrimination,
Oh yeah.
the racism.
Yeah.
That is I'm not. It's not necessarily like the religion. I mean, that could be a factor.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you how big
Yeah.
of a factor it was, but I personally, the biggest thing for me is like the racism and the discrimination that was truly felt.
Big problem.
And I think it's evident that it was a real thing outside of just South Sudan because of how people that are part of Sudan now, like the
Yeah.
Darfur, Nuba Mountain regions, are still being treated to this day.
1000%.
Yeah, it's like that's not even. It wasn't
Does-
just a South Sudanese thing, like we weren't making it up. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
real thing.
Yeah.
Does Sudan identify as an Arab nation?
I
That's
don't
a good
think so.
question.
I don't think
It
so.
does not.
Sudan does not.
I don't think so. I think I'll be completely honest with you guys, right?
They have
There's some
to-
Sudanese people that will be like, I am Arab,
No.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
But there's Sudanese people that genuinely will make that distinguishing factor of, I am furthest thing away from, I'm one of them. I'm the furthest thing away from what Arab is. I am actually an African person and an
Yeah.
African identity.
No, they have two celebrations in South Sudan. The Eid Mubarak, all that they celebrate. They get 2 days off, and then Christian. So they have two.
yeah. There's
religion
South
in
Sudanese people who
Sudan
are
is-
Muslim.
Yeah.
the Muslims
Yes.
and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Christian, and they celebrate each holidays
Together, yeah.
together.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
take time off and celebrate with the president and everybody.
And
So
that's an
we have two
example
religion.
of being together,
Yeah.
Yeah.
in both different religions.
Yeah, my parents would tell me how, like, before Sudan separated, whenever it was Ramadan, stuff like that, Tafadal, everyone would eat together
yeah.
regardless of religion. And whenever they had their things too, everyone would eat together regardless of religion. I just think it just comes down to how a government operates. And you could compare this to America and how the people operate.
Yeah.
The government moves within their own interests, but it's not always in the interest of the people. So similar to like the split that happened, I don't know if it was in the best interest of the people because now we're split and Sudan is in turmoil, still experiencing genocide.
Exactly.
Right, and
South
they wanted to
Sudan
have,
too,
they wanted to
yeah.
pursue a democracy, and now South Sudan, we have a government, quote unquote, but they're not really representing,
Doing
even though they're
anything.
not representing
Why?
us.
Why did
So-
they split?
You're right.
It just shows that even though we split, we still have our own battles, that we're still going through, even though we are, a government. So
And I think a lot of families do have that where it's a split as far as religious. Because me growing up, my father and my maternal mother, they were Muslim, so I grew up Muslim. And then when he remarried my stepmother, she was Christian, so I also grew up in a Christian. So my sister's side were Christian. Like I was a Christian probably for like 3 months because the Sunday school gave out free donuts. So
So you went for free.
yeah, I went there because they gave out free donuts. So I was like, okay, I can learn the Bible because the majority of the Quran is the Old Testament is the Bible. So
Yeah.
even
So
the
you
New
are good.
Testament is in the Quran. So I was like, I can do that. So I think the majority of Sudanese, whether it's South Sudanese or Sudanese, they have family members who are Christians and Muslims. So I think the religion just was just an easy
Propaganda.
opportunity to use because it became an emotional standpoint where it's like, oh, well, do you want Sharia law or not? But then at the same point, it's like most Sudanese people, even in Khartoum, nobody was going about with Sharia law because it's not a law that was going around. It was just something that the government wanted to push on people who were in a minority, so they can be like, well, we are
In power.
in power, and that's even like in Saudi Arabia, they do the same thing. Nobody in the royal in the royalty of Saudi Arabia is going about Sharia law, but what they do is they use the clergies who pushes their religion to kind of I don't know the word, to kind of keep the
Oppress.
population oppress the population down.
I don't
And-
know if it wasn't pushed. I do think that it was easy to use religion for the Western world because
Yeah, For sure.
because you know people in the Western world is like Islam.
Yeah.
Like,
Of course, of course,
I
of
think,
course.
I think
Yeah, that was the
like,
first thing.
it
why-
was easy to like
Yeah.
piggyback off of that. Like,
Yeah.
I can't go that far
I was-
because
I don't think
Amer-
that I wouldn't
America's the
say
biggest
that they
backers
weren't
of
Remember, like-
Saudi
pushing it.
Arabia.
I wouldn't
remember
say that.
when
In Saudi
the-
Arabia,
when
have
the-
Sharia law.
when Bashir went down during the protest, I think I was so proud of Sudan at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was like, I wish this would have happened a lot sooner
Mm-hmm.
before the separation, because when he went down, you could see like I was watching those YouTube videos and people getting interviewed, and they were saying this is not about religion. Like we're all South Sudanese. We just want the best for all South Sudan,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
for the benefit of all the people.
Yeah.
And like and maybe if that would have happened earlier, maybe we would have stayed one country.
Absolutely.
But I think maybe the separation contributed to that, when the people in the north realized like, okay, maybe this is not what's best. You know, we do need South Sudan. Like
Yeah.
those maybe separating, becoming one country is not the best thing.
Yeah.
We do need to be together.
Can
But
we
I,
just?
but I do agree with you, Sarah,
Yeah.
in the fact that a huge factor of that was the discrimination and the looking down on people who are of darker skin in South
Yeah.
Sudan. There was a level of dignity behind the fighting back, because you don't think we're human beings, or I mean, there's no Sudanese people who, you know, they might consider themselves Arabs until they go to an Arab country, and then they
yeah.
realize,
Treated
Yeah.
like
and then they realize like they
how
don't
they
even
view
consider you one of them.
Sudanese
Yeah,
people,
you know?
yeah.
Or they go to Arab country and they're
Yeah.
just,
Yeah,
just
they're
they're
nobody.
marginalized a certain
Exactly.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. And then
They've
they
gone to
realize
the
like, wait a
reality
minute.
hits
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And so like, but that was part of it.
And-
There's, I mean, I don't want to bring it up, but there's some
That's the
there's some
truth.
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
some
Bring it up.
There's some Arabic words that they use against South Sudanese people
Oh,
that are
absolutely.
very
Yeah.
that are very like
Abuse,
disgusting. And,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
It's
so-
like when we're in Kenya, you know, because we so dark, they call us monkey. You know, all these kind of names, because when we first came to Kenya, they would call us all kind of names, because they've never seen, Kenyans have never seen
anything darker.
in the
kinda
darker than
crazy,
that.
'cause
So you're
they're
talking
like
about
dark
Kenyans talking
Yeah,
to you?
Kenyan
Sarah?
used to call us monkeys, used to call us
Yeah.
charcoal, used to call us names.
Wow.
I
And that's
don't-
the same thing.
Do you remember that?
I didn't go through it.
Because you were from
But-
Kenya too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we went
but,
through hell through that. Kenyan schools, they used to call us they're like monkey. You black. What are you even? So we grew up with that.
I think that's colorism,
Mhm.
and maybe the difference is like racism.
Yeah,
My
I
thing
think
is,
that's
like-
that's yeah,
And
that's
that's-
what I'm.
there's a thin
It's an
there's a thin
identity
line. There's
thing,
a
and
thin
I feel
line.
like that's why we're having an identity issue now that the countries have split. Because, like, for me, I'm having an identity problem because even
For
though
sure.
my mom's family is from Khartoum and like they're mixed with Bidriya, which is like an Arab tribe, they're still dark skinned. So for me,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, they're not Arab.
Yeah.
Like if you look at them, you'll be like, they look like dark skinned Sudanese people, and that's
Yeah.
the thing too.
But
so
look
it's
at
not
your
like
We have got comments about
Chris,
that.
you know, look, KG, look at your skin.
yeah.
Look at my skin. Look at my skin. Look at
Yes.
his skin and his. So we
Even
different.
my Sudanese
Yeah.
Khartoum
Mhm.
family is dark
Then,
skinned as
yeah,
well. So you
I-
know,
you-
there's the
Yeah.
country is so diverse.
A
So that's why I
common-
asked, how does it identify? Because if they're trying to assimilate and align themselves with being an Arab country, then obviously they're going to try to suppress the darker skinned
Skin
people,
people. Of
like they do
Yeah.
in Brazil, like they do in all these South
Yeah.
American countries
Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
have dark skinned people. They don't put them in media. They don't put them on the forefront.
There was
even
a
though they
Sudan-
exist.
there was a Sudanese person that commented and said like, "You guys call us Arab, like, but we're not Arab. We have been
Yeah.
Arabized over
Yeah.
time."
Absolutely.
And I think that is important to also talk about and discuss.
But those
because-
of your father, my father, they fought for the dark skin Christians in South Sudan or in Sudan before before we separated. That was the fight in the go, because we are dark. The Nubians, the Dinkas, the Nuer, we are dark complexion. We can never change that.
The people in Darfur
And Darfur
everything.
and everything around Sudan.
BLM
The
and
first time I
everything.
experienced being acknowledged as a black South Sudanese woman is when I went for my brother's wedding. The guy comes in, the bodyguard, and says, and he's like, Martin Manuel, you are? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, let's go. And I'm like, yeah, but there are these people ahead of me. I can't just cut them. I grew up in America. I cannot,
Yeah.
And I refused. I literally refused. So by the time I went there, it was an hour late. He charged my family for an arm and a leg. But I'm like, how was I supposed to, I have never been acknowledged. And then when I went to Juba and see my dad's face on the billboard as one of the, martyrs of South Sudan, I was taken back. I'm like, okay, then my dad did not die in vain.
Yeah.
He died for me and my children and the grandchildren and the next generation. But then it puts me back, the whole nation, why they fought, why Uncle Makir fought for it, why Yusuf, all the SPLA people fought for this country.
Right.
And that's how we were treated. But just to get that acknowledgement for once, for just a second, it takes you back.
And I think
it's a different type of feeling.
And that's what I agree. Like I feel like a big part of that was just dignity.
Yeah.
For us as a dark-skinned people, we needed a place of our own where being dark-skinned is not used against you. And so I think you were surprised the fact that you were being called in front as a dark-skinned, because we're used to being in a world where because of our skin color we're supposed to be in the back at all times.
Yeah, aisle, in the back aisle.
Yeah, and so like
that's what we knew.
And so these people were fighting for self-determination as well, which means religion and be able to do what you want to do, practice what you want to practice, as long as you're not hurting anybody, but also dignity. These people are fighting for dignity.
It was the biggest dignity.
And so, we were tired of being called these names and made to feel like we're subhuman.
I think the bigger question for the panel too is from, I guess, what I see from the theme is like, is that big enough to separate as a country and become Sudan? Because it seems like that's the issue, is like, well, I don't think that we should separate and hurt ourselves more in the long run. Because
but we ain't benefiting,
as opposed to like working as a country to fix these issues.
But we're not benefiting.
And I always point this out as a stoic philosophy.
Boy,
I don't really care about the feelings, how somebody treats me,
right?
Because it's in the macro. It's about the bigger picture,
right?
So I feel like a lot of times is when we think about how somebody treats us is because how they see us is because how they see how they can respect us. Because a lot of times it's like, so if you look at the 70s and 80s, how Chinese people were being treated, they were being treated like dirt until they became a superpower. Now you cannot treat a Chinese person or Asian person like dirt because they have respect. They have a country behind them.
And they have laws.
They have laws behind them. And I feel like with a lot of Africans that we don't have countries behind us, especially East Africa, Sudanese, South Sudan, because we're at the bottom of every nation as far as metrics, whether it's GDP, whether it's PPP, as far as how the populations goes, we're at the bottom of every metric. So when we go to these other countries, whether if you're a Muslim and you go to the Hajj, or if you're a Christian and you go to Rome, they're going to look down upon you because you are not, unless you pull out that American passport. Because when they see that American passport, they're like, oh, you're American. Now they put that respect of America on you, and then they can push you in the front of the line instead of you being in the back of the line. Because at the end of the day, it's not about your skin, it's about the respect of the country that you are coming from. If it doesn't matter how dark I am, I've been to 25 countries. I'm as dark, I'm as black as this table. When I pull out that American passport, though,
you're really
being in America, you can see how politics works. It's like they use this cultural warfare to separate us from what the actual goal is, which is corporations are evil and the rich should not be rich.
So do you understand? Some of our fathers, my father, a kid father, died for this country because of colorism, because they wanted to free us from racism. From we were dark skinned, we were dinka, we were nobody.
And this is
blacks. So do you understand that we are unbeaten?
And this is why I would say,
are you becoming blind?
I'm not indifferent to it, but at the same point, even though they died for it, that does not mean that it was a correct cause.
No,
at the end of the day,
it was a correct cause.
It's not.
The new government fucked up.
So you're saying like we should have just been like, yeah, just live with it, getting treated like shit.
Because now
because the new government,
you point words in my mouth. That's not what I said. What I said was if it's not the correct cause, there was a better cause because you can juxtapose
What
that
is
with
a
how
better cause?
you can juxtapose that with how the American Civil War was when the Union
No,
fought the
why- no, no, no,
Confederacy.
no, no, no,
Yes,
no,
you
no,
can.
America with South Sudanese
Tariq.
and Africans. Why do you keep comparing us with America?
Because so when you have a democracy, what is a democracy? Democracy is the majority always gets the point, right?
The rich,
Yeah, but like-
the
but
rich,
like the
get-
Exactly,
get-
that's the
get-
democracy.
The majority have to respect the dignity and the rights of each individual in that situation.
Aspect.
It's not just
Technically,
like
no,
it's
not
they
not
do.
an absolute democracy.
Otherwise, we're not really a nation.
Not an absolute democracy. It does not. And this is why I always say,
here's the thing.
as a
If-
Stoic, I don't care
if
about
a majority,
feelings. If you're talking about democracy, and this is why I was like, as a nation, if you said, okay, democracy is not working because the North is putting pressure on the South because they're the minority.
Tariq,
Okay,
I
Yeah.
think the point is we were not one nation.
with
Yes.
two different nations,
Yeah.
South Sudan and
I think,
Sudan.
like if you think about it, we were not one
every
nation.
nation is that though.
And that's the problem, and that's what you're
Every
feeling.
nation-
and
there's
Tariq,
no
I think
na-
that's
there's
the
no one
frustration
nation.
that people are feeling is like you're failing to realize
They're
that the
feeling that's the issue. Then
we were feeling like
Logic.
this. Hold on.
Okay,
So,
need to look
hold
at
on.
no,
I just want to talk to him
okay,
real
if
quick.
not feeling, then what are we
I
feeling?
want to talk to him real quick. But no, tangibly, with our own eyes, you could see that the southern region
You're
was not
getting
developed.
frustrated.
Like with our own eyes, you could see that it wasn't a feeling.
I'm talking like somebody who could just decide, like, oh, make a republic. Who
They
why didn't they
voted
make a
for that
republic?
country.
Why did they?
You can't. When the Civil War happened, they chose the wrong path. They chose separation, which is the wrong path.
We did, South
Yes.
Sudanese.
So
How?
we chose
Because we wanted to be free. Because I wanted to be free.
Free
My
from
father,
what,
my
though?
father.
Okay,
free
guys.
from
Okay, listen, we're
Okay.
gonna bring this
issue.
back
Yeah,
in.
What are we
let's
talking about?
let's
Free from
let's
what?
pull it back.
What
Let's
are
pull
we
back.
fleeing from?
Tariq. I am mad, and the reason why I'm mad because my father died for this country.
Yes.
Martin Manyela Ayuel and my Uncle Benjamin, when they were in the bush, he was the spokesman in the radio. They didn't even have the right radio, but he broadcast the news. Because those of my father and him wanted to liberate us. Because why? The Bashir government oppressed us. Because we were dark skinned, we were Christian, and they were Muslim. How they did that? My father on the other arm, as a battalion army, he fought for that country until he died. And then when so it gets me emotional. Because my father and my uncle died for this country for what? And now we are a country, and the new government is not doing shit about this country. We're losing us, we're losing our children, we're losing our generation, the next generation. So I am pissed off. I am fucked now. When I went to South Sudan, my sister told me, you better be quiet before you die. Because this country, you don't say shit or else you're gonna be nobody. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm a social worker.
Willie.
I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong when I finish. I think Tariq is idealist. He's like,
That's true.
it's like we could have blah 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 blah, but we have to also live in reality, and the reality is Bashir was controlling everything, and he didn't. He was a dictator, and he didn't give us any sort
Leeway.
of level of being able to come in so we can be one country. Ideally, yes, we could be the biggest country in South Sudan with access
the
to the
world.
sea,
Yeah.
and
River
and
Nile and all that.
River
And
Nile.
that was the
Like-
original goal.
Like we could have been very powerful
Really?
if things would have went correctly.
That was the original
But-
goal. That was John
but-
Gadung's vision.
Yeah.
Either we can like work together and make this work where we're
Yeah.
all represented in government.
Yeah.
And the last straw would
everybody
be
gets treated
separate.
with dignity and respect
Yeah.
as a human being,
That's
Yeah.
it.
whatever religion or skin color they're in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or
That's
whatever,
all.
or race or whatever. But that's
That
not
didn't
reality.
happen.
That's not what happened. And we can't stay in a constant level of fighting to try to get that forever. We're literally all here because of that. Because they couldn't get their shit together. We're a bunch of refugees going from one country to another, not home because of that situation.
Right.
So ideally, yes, we could have come with a constitution where everybody gets to be treated as a human being. Everybody has the Bill of Rights or whatever, but that's not the reality that happened.
That happened.
It became a situation where, instead of being one nation, we decided
We
to
had
be
to
two
split.
different nations.
Yeah.
And
We didn't
let's
decide. It had to
yeah,
be.
yeah, we had to. And reality is none of us are better off after the
Without each
separation.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because we're part of
the
each
North
other.
is probably worse than it's ever been, and the South is not any better than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're
that's
right.
the reality.
Yeah.
I love that. That was,
yeah.
a great,
That was a great way to
Thank
end
you.
that
Yes.
that whole segment.
Thank
Well said.
Yeah.
Really, that was amazing. Mohammed, I have a question. We have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
question for you.
Yes.
Because a common point of discussion
Mhm.
is like the discrimination,
Yeah.
racism
Of
that
course.
happened in Sudan before we became one country.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, before we became two countries.
Mhm.
And I know like sometimes it's hard for people to understand because not everybody that listens to the podcast
right.
is from Sudan or South Sudan.
South Sudan,
So they're
yeah.
probably like, what's the difference between
Yeah.
Sudan and South Sudan?
Right,
Or
right,
what's
right.
going on? Like
Right.
we kind of go back and forth. Do you feel like from your experience or your knowledge and your understanding that there is truth to the discrimination or racism that
Oh,
South Sudanese
1000%.
people have felt or
Oh.
dark-skinned people have felt?
1000%. Yeah, I mean it's in the language, it's in the like the way certain Sudanese are like, oh, they're Janubi, like it's sometimes there's a really negative connotation to that, and like sometimes when I think for a lot of Sudanese they might just like hear that and be like, okay, that's just normal. That's just how we just say it. That's just
Yeah,
part
it's
of the culture,
normalized.
Exactly. It's very normalized. And I think the bigger thing is like that has to end. That has to correct itself. Like we are not doing anything positive in terms of like dwelling into the same similar conversation of calling this person this person that, this person this. It just doesn't do good for anybody. I consider myself an African man, African Sudanese man. And part of the reason why that is because I feel like Sudan is not just regionally, but it is more African than it'll ever be Arab. Now, when we do get into the discussion of Arab or Arabic, it's tough because there's what is really the classification of somebody who is Arab speaking. Like for a lot of people, they could consider themselves just Arab based on the fact that they speak Arabic. But to me, it's not that. To me, it's about the customs, the traditions, and Sudanese customs and traditions. To me, are a bit more
sorry
African than they are Arab.
Yeah,
Yes.
and like and the word Sudan itself, it means the
Land of the blacks, exactly.
Blacks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't
Which
feel
is
comfortable
the
around
crazy
Arabs.
which is the crazy thing about this whole discussion. It's like the name, the Sudan name by itself is
Yeah.
it means the land of the
No,
blacks.
yeah.
Yeah,
why
but-
don't you
but
why
I'll
don't
let
you feel
continue.
comfortable around Arab?
Just because I think the blackness, that's something that they'll never be able to translate or understand or even
accept.
put there accept exactly.
Yeah.
Because our blackness.
Yes.
They don't understand it. And
Your blackness is not the same as his. My blackness is not the
the same as
same.
exactly.
So then
Yeah.
that's the part. That's the conversation where it gets complicated.
Yeah,
Right.
But when you talk about how other countries view Sudan, they still view us as a black nation, even
Of
the
course.
Arab countries.
Even the Bible
So,
says the land of the
exactly.
Kush,
Yeah.
the land of the black, and the oil and the
Yeah.
whatever.
I wish we
We
didn't
were
separate.
destined to be there.
But I think
And
that
I think that's probably why I have I'll tell you that's why I have a pushback about giving up that
Land.
That name.
Yeah.
that name Sudanese, because I feel like we are Sudanese, and just
Yeah.
to give it up because we want our own identity. I'm pushing back to giving up that.
what
That's
the
fair.
Bible
Yeah.
gave us.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the
So
land
all
of
of a
the
sudden,
Kush,
like, yeah,
the
exactly.
black and
Yeah.
the handsome and the oil
tall
and
and-
the
yeah,
tall and
tall-
everything.
yeah.
We are everything.
Yeah.
For me, I can say as a dark skinned person, it's very hard living in the world as not only a dark skinned person or as a dark skinned woman. And I understand for Tariq, like you feel like it doesn't really affect you in your spaces the way that you move. But I think that being a woman, that added layer to it, it is a factor in your day to day life, like having to kind of anticipate the stereotypes that people might have on dark skinned people or women. And I think that it's very difficult when in your own home country, your blackness is an issue.
Yeah.
I feel like if you can't be proud, dark skinned, and who you are, where you're actually from in your country, then how do you stand a chance
Yes.
in
And
this
as a
world
mother,
that is so anti-black?
And as a mother, it affects him.
Arab, why does it operates very similar to white supremacy. You have skin bleaching in our country, right? Even in America, like this innate thing that to be closer to having lighter skin is a good thing, because you can't say it's just religion, because in the Darfur region, there's people that are Muslim and they're experiencing genocide, and they have for many, many years.
Yeah.
These people are Muslim. These are your brothers and sisters that they are killing. They're the largest displacement crisis in the world right now is among Sudanese people. These are people that share the same. Can they even pray with you guys?
My sister.
Can they pray with you guys?
You have to bleach
It's
your
colorism.
skin.
It's
You have to
beyond
clean.
religion.
That's
It's
still not gonna be good
colorism.
enough, too.
And it's an evil that is permeating our country, in which people are having to leave their homes. Even we talked about Baby Janet last week, a couple weeks ago. People that have to leave their homes because they're not even able to be black where they are from.
Yeah.
They have to go to other countries and be treated like second-class citizens.
And when I went to my
it's
brother's
so
wedding,
sad.
I have to bleach to be in the groom thing, and I'm not bleaching.
Wow.
And South Sudan is a homo.
That is
South
a
Sudan
very
is predominantly dark
important
skinned,
point.
but we have this innate thing to like be. Beauty is connected to being light,
Yes.
and we are a very homogenous dark skin. But I think our proximity to people that identify as Arabs has made it to where that is a standard of beauty.
Yeah.
To where we
Yeah.
feel like, oh, this is an event, we gotta bleach our skin. We see
Yeah.
that so much in our
That's
community.
insane.
But I can't even blame the women that do that, because that's a beauty standard that was created. I
Right.
can't blame someone for
No,
doing
but
that.
my daughter, to tell you, last week, I knocked when she went the walkway. If you saw that video, she was the blackest woman
Yeah,
ever.
at the Met Gala.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was the
She
most
was
everybody.
the
beautiful.
That shows our
Yeah.
color. That's what we are, South Sudanese women.
Exactly.
So we need to embrace that.
Embrace
My children, your children, the next generation. Because
Yeah.
she showed who we are.
Yeah.
Because
But
nobody was looking at
unapologetic.
her.
Yes.
But she looks so beautiful.
She stood out,
standing,
baby. She
and
sure
stood
did.
and
But it shows how much
Yeah.
like we've been indoctrinated to think that dark skin is it's not attractive, it's not beautiful.
Yeah.
There's like a layer to it. There's just so much, like colorism is so deep, and racism. And when we talk about the dynamics between Sudan and South Sudan, that all kind of piles up.
I think a lot of it is that we using, and like I always feel like the micros, because the beauty standards has been set. South Koreans do
We are
the bleaching of skins, the number one bleaching of skin as far as ointments is in South Korea, because South Koreans wants to be as light as possible. Jamaicans, Congolese, it's everywhere. It's not just South Sudanese. It's not this standard of being dark skinned it's not regional. It's not tied to just
We're
one
not
of
saying
us.
it's unique to us. We're just
It's-
saying it affects us.
Yeah.
And we are
why
the
should
standard
it,
of
though?
dark skin in the world.
Like,
When
Because
we
it
get
does.
dark
It has-
skin.
The beauty industry.
it
Who
has-
was empowered in
It
Sudan?
has a lot to
I
do
don't
with
think it
it has
should,
a lot
though.
to do with colonization.
You don't
I don't think
understand
it
as a
should, but it
man.
already did.
It has
I do though.
No, as a man.
So Tariq,
look-
can you honestly say that you've never experienced colorism? Like you've
I do
never
experience it. I just don't let it impact.
No,
Just
but
think
as
about
a
the
man,
way I
it
move.
does not, because you,
it's
the man,
different.
listen, really
Yeah.
sorry, but as a man, you have the power.
But it's not even-
As with the women, we have to engage and make it a priority and make it a point. That's why it affects us.
Colorism affects men differently than it affects women. Darkness in general is associated with masculine energy.
masculinity.
Masculine. It's not the same way that it affects
Yeah.
women.
I think the bigger conversation is honestly is that us just in general, and this happens for Sudanese people as well. Like we have never had a moment to really appreciate and love our blackness, and that goes for South Sudanese and then Sudanese people as well. So sometimes the bigger thing is that's why I'm loving this wave now. That is, we're appreciating a blackness. There's pride in being black. And then now, hopefully from that can kind of take us to another more evolving conversation of like, let's be together and let's accept our blackness, but also take over and do better with our blackness.
I'm appreciative of this conversation because when we talk about stuff like this, we do get a lot of Sudanese people who are like, first of all, we're not Arab. We're Arabized. We're Arabized
Right.
country.
Right.
And when I see you, I do see that because I don't see you as Arab.
Yeah.
I'm even thinking,
I don't look at you
shit
and
now.
see like
I'm getting
an Arab
high.
man.
Right, yeah.
I do see
Sudani.
when you say
Sudanese.
like a Sudani, when you say you're from
Yeah.
Sudan, I'm like, oh, I can see that. I see that, but
Yeah.
you don't give me
Right.
Arab. But sometimes when I do think of Sudan, I do think of like straight up like
Oh, of course. Yeah. Of course.
100%.
Only natural.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's something that I'm actually learning so much as well. But also,
It's very rare though that you will find Sudanese people that actually feel like they're.
Be honest.
Yeah, I'm being honest.
Because
I'm
you've
being
been
as
wrong,
honest
being
as possible.
And I
Like
applaud.
I've seen it. I'm not saying that I haven't seen it, but I'm saying it's not as prominent as what you might think. I think because of the way Arab culture is, it's really kind of like had its foot on its neck. On
It's
our
a
neck
new
in a
wave.
way where like
Yeah.
everything and just the way we carry out conversation, the way we are with conversation. But I think it's very rare to find a lot of Sudanese actually like being proud of them being like, okay, I am actually Arab.
Because
it's
you have
not
to
as
look
common.
okay,
at
so
it.
there's not a lot of.
It's not as common as you would think.
Okay.
Because you have to look at it from a standpoint where even when we look at culture like music, because I grew up coming to America, I came to America in 1996. African was not looked at as a great thing. You didn't want to call yourself African.
Okay.
And then
You
up
know
until to a certain point when Afrobeat started, Zonto music, all these things started going up.
Burna Boy?
Now you can call yourself African,
No,
and it's the same thing with being Arabic is because when I used to go to Dubai before it became where it's at right now, nobody wants to call themselves 2001. Nobody wanted to call themselves Arabic or Arab because 9/11 happened, et cetera, and then Arab became the top. Everybody want to go to Dubai. Everybody want to go to Kuwait. Everybody want to go to Oman. The minority has the highest voices because the minority has social media. So they'll do is that they'll be on social media talking the loudest. And a lot of times, like you'll see these people who are they call them like Mundukuru or from Sudan, saying I'm Arab. They speak Arabic because that's the wave. It's like if you're Arab, you're from Dubai, you're from Saudi Arabia, you going into that wave, and you can go into that wave, and you can get more.
And there's Sudanese
more
people.
things. So they just jump on that wave.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
there's Sudanese people that I know.
We're talking about the identity.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was piggybacking on.
Yeah, and there's Sudanese people that we know, or people that that I know, or even in my family that have grown up in Arab countries who've now taken that Arab identity and completely kind of downplayed or put their Sudanese identity.
That's me.
Because it's
in
the
second
new
place.
From
Yeah,
2005.
But we
I
look
have
at those
played-
Sudanese people at a certain way, and we don't really look at them as Sudanese as what we might think.
But I'll say this. I'll say that it's not a good time for the country. I don't think your love of your country should be based on the politicians or how it's going at the moment. I think you should always love your country beside the politics of it and who's in charge. Your love of the country should be consistent.
No.
Yeah. So this conversation is not one that can be, I guess, summarized or, wrapped up in one episode. And I'm really thankful for you, Mohammed, for coming on the panel. It's conversations like this that are going to be able to help us kind of, I guess, I don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of anything, but bridge the gap and gain understanding now that we are at the place to where we are two separate countries. And what does that mean for like our identity as Sudanese and South Sudanese people? And how can we kind of come to a common ground of understanding of like, okay, this is where we are, but we still have love for each other as people who did used to be, one nation, one people, and still some people feel like we are. So I don't want to keep it going because I think we need to break this up and then do a part two and maybe have one or two other, Sudanese people on the panel along with us to kind of Please do.
Do you think other Sudanese are like,
please do.
Like, dang, I'm not coming over there.
No, he said he's going to bring some.
All of you are coming back.
That's why we cut it so we don't have to.
We're going to have Bamia and Mullah Khudra and Kisra and everything next time. So invite them.
Listen, that was the way to reel them in.
Tell them we will have Mullah Khudra.
I got you.
Mullah
Bamia
Bamia.
this time.
Bashata, basalata, everything dakwa on the side. Everything will be there. And we're going to keep this conversation going.
Yeah.
But for the sake of time, we're going to have to pause it here.
So just to wrap up some of the closing arguments for today, we only had one person, Mohammed, from the Sudan, the northern region of the country. But I think what we got from it is like there's still a lot of identity issues that is going on with our country. A lot of people do identify with being South Sudan, which I'll be one of those people. But there's also still argument that we were better, stronger as a country, as one country, and that's something that I have also gathered. Christine, is there anything else that you gathered from that? Like,
no, I mean, it was really interesting to hear both sides. Not that they were opposing or anything like that, but I think there is a lot of like identity. I don't want to say we're having an identity crisis, but some people are very like stuck on where they identify as, and then other people kind of are struggling to grasp kind of where do you fit in. But I think the one common thread has been acceptance for all people of all skin tones, of all colors. I think that can start there regardless of us being one nation. I think we can all kind of learn that people come in different shades and colors, and that doesn't necessarily take away from a person's culture or how they view themselves to be. So I just hope that we can come to a place of acceptance for all people, whether you're light skinned or dark skinned. But obviously for me, being a dark skinned person, I do feel like it's very difficult to move in spaces when you identify as being a dark skinned woman, and then whenever you in your own country are having issues where it's like you're not even accepted within your own so it's just very difficult, and I do think that that's an issue whether as a man it affects you or not. But Tariq did make statements earlier that I was like, no, that discrimination bit is a big bit for me, because I mean, everyone wants to feel validated and to feel like, a human who's worthy of respect and acceptance and to be valued. Like, every human life is important. So that's just where I stand with that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think everybody's points are valid. And I think it's really important for us as the younger generation to talk about these certain things.
Yeah, have these conversations.
Yes, absolutely. This was very important. I hope to extend this conversation to be like a part 2, part 3.
Yeah, and shout out to Mohammed, because I still see him as my Sudanese brother.
My brother.
Like, you understand, you understand what it means to be a Sudanese person. The food, everything, you jumped right in. You were able to eat the mullah hasida, everything.
And I felt comfortable right at home.
So,
oh my God, that's so important. Yeah.
Wow.
I really do want to cry.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'm that type of person. Like, I identify as South Sudanese like fully, but when you came in and like you're in the fold, I'm like, okay, I'm cool.
We literally, Yo, some of us are cool.
Yeah.
All right, some of us are cool.
When I identify as Sudanese.
All right, here comes Tariq. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to wrap up this one, because if not, we're going to be here all night. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. I'm going to have everybody's handles in the description down below. So please go and follow them and show support to everybody. Thank you so much to our beautiful panel for all being here and being a part of this conversation, as spicy as it was. It's so needed. So we're going to definitely do a part 2. And thank you so much for all of the delicious food that you cooked for us and for being here with us today. Yes, thank you so much.
And South Sudanese.
That is our culture, no matter what. That's always going to be the same.
Yeah.
And thank you guys so much. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you.